du précédent. Votre série, vous cherchez les porte-drapeaux qui étaient restés derrière. Ah, peut-être. Hein?
Pas confortablement.
Une fois que tu as fini une fiche, tu la poses sur la table.
I mean, maybe the prison. Were you here when they did the 5,000? 14 years ago. I always fly past way over there. Well, sort of. Very nice to fly. Yes. So you have one runway this way and another?
Yes, we have 09, 27.
321. And
Right, yeah.
concrete?
Yeah, okay.
And is the grass alongside the concrete as well?
Quelques instants, je vous ai reculé un peu, partager un peu parce que les jeunes ont défilé cet espace ici et cet espace ici. S'il vous plaît. Merci.
Seuil décalé.
Voilà, ça marche, merci.
I think that was land 2 gates. Chapter 1?
Yes. Right, just a full everything, and you have to and sometimes there is sometimes
Open?
yes, because
Excellent. So that's
Barry Dickens. Well, one airfield. Yeah, he was the guy who,
Ouvrons-nous. Tu m'entends là?
Ah,
Voilà.
vas-y,
Très bien.
parle.
Bonjour, bienvenue.
Ouais,
Bienvenue
super.
dans le Pas-de-Calais.
Et merci, ok, merci beaucoup. J'avais un doute. Bonjour ou bonsoir? Bonsoir peut-être. Ouais, ouais. Bah, faut peut-être pas faire un direct. Ouais. Et dans ce cas-là, si vous avez besoin de communiquer, c'est par Juliette. Je suis sur mode avion et vous me faites une petite fiche. Si je dois pas faire. D'accord. Priorité au sujet. Ok, Jean-Marc.
S'il vous plaît. Merci. S'il vous plaît. Derrière la barrière, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Je vais mettre France 3 quand même.
Bien sûr.
Bah, on va démarrer, on va démarrer.
Alors Julien, tout le monde s'accorde à considérer que la RAF, la Royal Air Force, est née ici à Longnes. Mais pour bien comprendre, il faut remonter à octobre 1914. Hein.
Oui, bah, la Royal Air Force a une grand-mère. Et cette grand-mère, c'est le Royal Flying Corps, qui a été créé ici. C'est ce qu'on apprend finalement quand on découvre ici ce lieu. C'est que le Royal Flying Corps, qui a été créé par le roi en 1912, et qui était au début vraiment, on va pas appeler ça une armée, on va appeler ça plutôt un rassemblement d'avions, une trentaine d'avions au début, qui vont petit à petit se professionnaliser pendant...
C'est bon ?
Merci.
Shoulder, right, no directing, shoulder. There's a barrier, sorry sir, there's a barrier. Toes. So we put these just here.
Is difficult as a force. It's not too simple.
S'il vous plaît. Thank you very much.
Vous avez reculer, s'il vous plaît. We have to move back a little bit, please. We don't have enough space to do it. Il faut reculer, s'il vous plaît, et ne pas assez d'espace pour le défilé. Merci. Un mètre de plus, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Okay, bring these guys back to the normal tram tunnel.
Why not?
You're going to struggle with that. We are going to need this space. No, we need this space clear at the end. Have we got any more? Have we got any more?
Pour vous, dans une zone, à la fin de la cérémonie, il faut dégager cette zone pour que le défilé puisse aller à l'extérieur.
So at the end of the ceremony, the parade will march through here. So as it comes to an end, if you could please make sure this whole space is quite clear for the marching troops to pass through. Thank you very much.
There's room for you guys if you want. There are some seats. Are there? Yeah. If you take half a dozen, you can probably get some seats. Just, if you just go through there and lift the barrier up, there are some seats at the back. Yeah, I'm absolutely okay with that. Just take half a dozen with you. If you just go through these guys, and then just sit at the back. All right.
Okay, we have 10 minutes before the start of the ceremony. We have 10 minutes before the start of the ceremony. Yep, that's good. It says you're
You all right, chaps?
reçoit ici à l'antenne, nous sommes ici dans ce qu'il convient d'appeler, comme vous l'avez dit, le berceau de la Royal Air Force. Pourquoi? Les gens sont peut-être surpris de l'apprendre aujourd'hui. Eh bien tout simplement puisque l'ancêtre de la Royal Air Force, le Royal Flying Corps, est né, s'est professionnalisé tout au long de la Première Guerre mondiale ici sur cet aérodrome finalement de Saint-Omer. Et donc en 1912, le roi va créer le Royal Flying Corps. Au début, il y a une trentaine d'avions et à la fin de la Première Guerre mondiale, quand on signe l'acte de création de la Royal Air Force, le 1er avril 1918, c'est une armée avec plus de 300 000 hommes, plus de 20 000, 22 000 avions, c'est la plus grande armée du monde et tout le monde s'entend à dire côté britannique, d'ailleurs on l'aperçoit avec le monde présent ici, que la Royal Air Force est née ici à Saint-Omer.
Alors là, la fanfare a démarré, la cérémonie a pris un tout petit peu de retard. Julien, rappelez-nous aussi pourquoi effectivement Saint-Omer. C'est-à-dire que la
Would you please sit? Our Order of Service thanks Twin 4 Squadron Lafayette Escadron for the flypast. It was actually 1-4 Squadron, so we thank them for their perfect timing. I would now like to invite to the platform François Maubaye, President of the Aero Club here at Saint-Omer, and Air Vice Marshal Dr. Peter Dye of the Royal Air Force.
Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Bonjour Madame Dariussec. Bonjour Monsieur De Coster, président et maire de Saint-Omer et de la Capso. Bonjour Air Marshal Stewart Evans. Bonjour Monsieur le député, Monsieur le sous-préfet. Dear RAF 9th, 1641 and 206th Squadron Representative. Dear Peter Dye, dear Lord Trenchard, dear General Rousset, dear friend from RAF Squadron Association, dear French officials, dear French, chers amis. En tant que président et au nom de l'ensemble des membres de l'Aéroclub, j'ai le plaisir de vous accueillir ici, sur l'aérodrome de Saint-Omer. Je vous remercie de participer avec nous à cette commémoration du départ du dernier squadron de notre terrain en 1918. Depuis 1956, l'Aéroclub s'efforce de développer l'activité aérienne sur le dos marois, en étant entre autres une école de pilotage en formant des jeunes au brevet d'initiation aéronautique, en proposant des baptêmes de l'air. Nous sommes la porte d'entrée de la 3e dimension de l'Odo-Marois. Nos membres contribuent à la préservation de ce site historique, mais aussi accueillent régulièrement tous nos amis pilotes anglais qui viennent rendre hommage à leurs soldats morts pour la France. It is also important for us to make this memory act to pay tribute to the soldiers and their family who gave all they had and more to help their neighbor for saving peace. From 1956, the Air Club is on charge to develop aerial activities as to train pilots, to teach young people for having their first aeronautics diploma, and to offer to access to the 3rd dimension of Saint-Omer. By this way, the Air Club is contributing to the site preservation, and he is the first key entry point for the British pilots who want to discover the town and pay tribute to a family member or to the soldiers. So, it was natural for us to participate to this historic anniversary, and it is a real pleasure to welcome you here. It is for all of us the proof of the strong relationships which exist between our two nations. Thank you for your attention. Merci pour votre attention.
Madame la Ministère, Lord Trenchard, Monsieur le Maire, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great privilege to welcome you to the British Air Services Memorial. When the memorial was unveiled in 2004, the centenary of the Entente Cordiale, it was our intention that it should not only provide a tribute to all those who had served on the Western Front, but also commemorate the close bonds between Britain and France. In this endeavour, we were greatly helped by the Aero Club of Saint-Omer, and most importantly, by the Mayor of Saint-Omer, Monsieur Jean-Jacques Delvaux. I would like to pay tribute to his vision and enthusiasm, without which we would not be here today. It is said that Britain and the United States are two nations separated by a common language. I often think that Britain and France are two nations separated by a common history. In remembering what we have sacrificed together, we celebrate the values we share and the enduring friendship between our two nations. It is fitting that the centenary of the Royal Air Force should be commemorated at this site, in so many ways the spiritual home of the Royal Flying Corps and the birthplace of the Royal Air Force. Our two great nations face a difficult and dangerous world, but our shared history offers a path to a safer future and the certain knowledge that together we can prevail. Thank you very much.
Squadron Leader Colin Bostrom will now lead for us Per Noctum Valamus.
We fly by night, we challenge the unknown, and we hope we do not die before wild oats are sown. We fly by night into the fearful dark and hope that we get home ere wakes the morning lark. We fly by night, perhaps we'll never learn. We hope that we get back and pray it's not our turn.
At the cathedral earlier, we heard the reading from High Flight and reminding us of the loneliness of being a pilot in the air and that opportunity perhaps to reflect and to touch the face of God through those fears that so eloquently read there in that poem by Sergeant Jim Brookbank, Second World War bomb aimer of 9 Squadron. I would now like to invite the Viscount Lord Trenchard to read for us.
Madame la Ministre, Monsieur le Maire, Mesdames et Messieurs, now excuse me if I speak in English, but although many years ago I actually was awarded grade 1 in French language O-level, I'm afraid my standard has deteriorated seriously. But I was delighted some months ago to receive a telephone call from Monsieur Lucas Lacombe, inviting me to attend these ceremonies today. And I am most honored to have been asked to address you at this special place. I was last here 14 years ago to attend the unveiling of the wonderful memorial, which I'm very happy to see looks as good as it did on its unveiling day. Its erection was much overdue, and it was largely due to the unfailing efforts of Air Marshal Peter Dye and his team at that time that due recognition was given to the supreme sacrifice paid by so many brave airmen that France and Great Britain might be free again. This is a special place for me because my grandfather was sent here by General Sir David Henderson in November 1914 as commander of the First Wing of the Royal Flying Corps. The RFC's headquarters was here, and the First Wing was based at Merville. It is here that the fledgling air service won its spurs and was first able to demonstrate that man's mastery of the air had changed warfare out of all recognition. Among the first military commanders to recognize that was General Sir Douglas Haig, later Field Marshal Lord Haig. My grandfather, then only a lieutenant colonel, was summoned by Haig in January 1915 and asked to provide reconnaissance support for Haig's planned spring offensive against the German lines at Neuve-Chapelle and later at Ypres. The two men established a strong relationship which endured throughout the war and afterwards. General Henderson was recalled to London in August to serve at the War Office, and my grandfather was appointed General Officer commanding the Royal Flying Corps and moved to take over the headquarters here at Saint-Omer, or Longness. He didn't just take over the RFC headquarters, he also inherited General Henderson's ADC, Wing Commander Maurice Baring, a most cultured man of letters who was able to put my grandfather's thoughts into persuasive and comprehensible prose. In August 1916, he wrote, to Lady Juliet Duff. It was a year yesterday that Trenchard took over command of the Royal Flying Corps. What he did with such difficulty and in the face of such opposition is now admitted by all to have been triumphantly successful. And during these operations, his genius has been proved. And everyone admits it. The French think he is a wonder. They say, c'est quelqu'un, which is the greatest praise, don't you think? And in May 1917, the head of the French Flying Corps visited us yesterday and before landing did a spinning nosedive just to show us all was well. Yesterday, we visited 9 squadrons and 3 kite balloons. And the general spoke to all the pilots and saw everything. He rides the whirlwind and directs the storm, and kindles in everyone he sees an undying spark, but he was white with fatigue afterwards. I can't tell you how tiring it must be for him, since I myself, who only look on, am worn to a shred. My grandfather and Baring were very complimentary. In the early years, supplies of aircraft and spares were the most serious problem, and rarely were delivered as promised. The RFC had to lean heavily on the goodwill of the French, buying what could be bought, and sometimes descending to rough forms of barter. Baring, with his idiomatic French and consummate tact, seldom emerged empty-handed from deals of this kind. By 1917, at the outset of the Somme attack, the RFC had a total of 410 aircraft distributed among 26 frontline squadrons. More than half were Army cooperation squadrons, which were also used for bombing. The rest were fighters. But my grandfather's estimated frontline requirements submitted to Henderson amounted to 10 long-range bomber squadrons and 56 fighter and Army cooperation squadrons, together with 60 balloon observation units. The RFC, strengthened by improved aeroplanes, such as the Sopwith Camel, the Bristol F-2 and the de Havilland DH-4, obtained undisputed air mastery over the Somme and the mighty German Fokker aeroplane. At the very end of December 1917, following the passage of the Air Force Constitution Act, which merged and established the Royal Flying Corps and the Royal Naval Air Service as a separate and independent Royal Air Force, my grandfather very reluctantly left Saint-Omer to take up his appointment as Chief of Air Staff. Prior to the formal formation of the Royal Air Force on the 1st of April 1918, he did not get on at all well with the first Air Minister, Lord Rothermere, and both men had to resign. However, my grandfather then returned to France to take command of what was called the Inter-Allied Independent Air Force, based at Nancy, and incorporating both French and American elements. After the armistice, Sir Winston Churchill was appointed Secretary of State for War and Air and recalled my grandfather as Chief of the Air Staff in May 1919. He remained for another 10 years in that post and successfully fought off continued attempts by politicians, generals, and admirals to dismember the newly established Royal Air Force. His confidence and his belief in the importance of the air and his understanding of the role of air power in warfare all depended and derived from the experience he had gained during his command of the Royal Flying Corps here in Saint-Omer. The Royal Air Force that he nurtured and whose institutions he created ensured that it was once again able to defend and come to the aid of France as well as Britain in the Second World War. It is wonderful that in these unpredictable times, the air forces of both our countries continue to train together and form joint operations, enjoying a very close relationship. I have heard that Saint-Omer is the birthplace of the Royal Air Force. I'm not sure if that is literally 100% correct, because some people in Whitehall or Westminster might think it was there. But certainly, whether that is literally correct or not, Saint-Omer has a very good claim to be the place where the Royal Air Force was conceived. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your hospitality and for ensuring that we could celebrate today the part that your fine city played in the creation of the Royal Air Force 100 years ago.
Viscount Lord Trenchard, thank you for reminding us that this is a spiritual home of the Royal Air Force and its first operational headquarters, so truly significant in our 100-year history. I'd now like to invite Air Chief Marshal Harper from 41 Squadron to speak for us.
Monsieur le Maire, Madame la Ministre, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed, Padre, for the promotion. Long overdue. It is a huge pleasure to represent Number 41 Squadron as its association president at this historic occasion. Pray silence just for a moment. Imagine the sound of an SE-5A taking off from this airfield 100 years ago today. The last Royal Air Force aircraft to leave Saint-Omer during World War I. I hope that as we have visited the cathedral and the cemetery today, that we have been adequately reminded of the horrors of warfare back in those times. The Padre quite rightly reminded us in his sermon this morning that warfare is an ever-evolving fact of life, and one which is a failure of politics if it ever comes about. 41 Squadron today, 100 years after that departure from Saint-Omer, still very proudly wears the cross of Saint-Omer as part of its squadron crest. It is somewhat ironic, I think, that I, as a junior pilot on the squadron in 1979, subsequently its commanding officer in the mid-1990s, and then as ASC-1 group later on in the mid-2000s, wear that cross on a crest on my wristwatch every single day, talk hugely proudly about the association of what I still call my squadron and Saint-Omer, and yet, apart from one visit to this airfield as part of a staff ride, I had never previously come to the amazing city that was really the birthplace of the Royal Air Force. So it is amazingly fitting, I think, that we should be back here today, celebrating not only the 100th year of the Royal Air Force, but also the Royal Air Force's and the Royal Flying Corps' incredible relationship with this part of France, with this amazing city, and with France in general. 41 Squadron today is a test and evaluation unit. It is concentrating on the difficult, tricky aspects of warfare. The technological challenges that are faced in all of the dimensions, and the president of the Aero Club talked about there being 3. There are now at least 6, because we must add space, cyberspace, and information to air, land, and sea as environments that are all contested, are all being looked at by number 41 Squadron today. So, let us continue, ladies and gentlemen, to spread goodwill between our nations. Whatever happens in political circles, do not let us allow the relationship that we have formed here at Saint-Omer between the United Kingdom and France as brothers in arms ever suffer, because no single nation in the future will fight a war alone. It will be us together that will prevail. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.
I do hate to make it the shortest promotion in history, but Air Marshal Harper, thank you. I would now like to invite Chief Tech Christian Swanson from 9 Bomber Squadron to lead us in a recollection.
Thank you, Marjorie. My Lord, sirs, ma'ams, ladies, gentlemen, friends. My name is Chief Technician Robert Swanson, and I'm an engineer on number 9 Bomber Squadron, and I will personally, on behalf of the squadron, like to extend a very warm welcome to you. I haven't had the pleasure of being here at Saint-Omer myself since our 100th anniversary celebrations back in 2014, but I know I speak for all the past and present members of number 9 Squadron when I say it feels like we're home again. When I was asked to speak on behalf of the squadron, it was an honour I was ordered to quickly accept. Number 9 Wireless Squadron was formed here in Saint-Omer on the 8th of December 1914. It was the first Royal Flying Corps squadron to be formed outside of the United Kingdom, and formed a full 22 days before number 8 Squadron, not that anybody's counting. The squadron was formed from the wireless flights of the Royal Flying Corps headquarters here in Saint-Omer under the command of Major Herbert Musgrave and flying BE-2A aircraft. Musgrave was a decorated and brilliant Boer War veteran and early pioneer in the use of wireless technology. Musgrave, along with 2 exceptional officers, Captain James and Captain Lewis, was instrumental in the development and installation of wireless technology to aircraft. Sadly, none of the 3 would survive the war, and this was indicative of the horrendous losses of World War I and indeed early aviation. Under Musgrave's leadership, 9 Squadron was soon regarded as the leading light in the application and use of wireless technology. Lessons learned and innovations made were rapidly adopted by both the British Army and the Royal Navy. For his relentless work and faultless leadership in the early days of number 9 Squadron, Major Musgrave was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. Innovative use of wireless technology and communications was also a factor in the rise to greatness of Musgrave's successor as OC 9 Squadron, a certain Major Hugh Caswell Tremenhere Dowding, who went on to become the Commander-in-Chief of Fighter Command and indeed the architect of victory in the Battle of Britain, something our Typhoon-equipped successors will undoubtedly take great pride in. When I boarded the train in Folkestone yesterday, 35 minutes later I was getting off it again in Calais, and less than an hour later we were here in beautiful Saint-Omer. It is easy to take for granted how things have changed in the last 104 years. For those early pioneers who left various airfields in southern England to fly over the Channel, it was a different matter entirely. Can you imagine? Cross the English Channel, look for the coastline, turn right a bit and try and find an airfield. It was hardly surprising that some turned back, others got lost or landed anywhere they could and asked for directions, and some were never seen again. Bearing in mind that this was only 11 years after the Wright brothers had made the first powered flight, and a mere 5 years after the first successful crossing of the English Channel. Those early pilots were lucky if they'd received more than 10 hours training before they were sent across the Channel to join the newly formed 9 Squadron in Saint-Omer. these men were pioneers in a new military age. Sadly, after arriving, their troubles continued as the Royal Flying Corps faced harsh criticism from Army generals who could only imagine that aircraft would serve a very limited reconnaissance role in wartime. However, this role quickly evolved into pilots taking potshots at each other with their service revolvers, often without success, and occasionally even managing to shoot themselves down in the process. Thankfully, the weapons and tactics of the present-day Royal Air Force have evolved somewhat. Whilst the current role of No. 9 Bomber Squadron is completely different to that of our forebears, some of the basic principles of wireless technology are still in use today and will remain so for some time to come. And we owe a debt to those early pioneers who proved the value of military aviation. On a slight tangent, Saint-Omer holds great personal significance for me. My great-great-uncle served in the army on the Western Front and was injured. When he was injured, he was treated here in Saint-Omer at one of the many hospitals before being repatriated to the United Kingdom. So for me personally, as well as for No. 9 Bomber Squadron, this will always be a special place. The importance of Saint-Omer in the First World War, both as an airfield, a forward operating base and a triage centre, is beyond debate, and the location holds a special place in the history of British military aviation. Thank you.
Chief Secretary Swanson, thank you very much indeed. I'd now like to invite Fabienne Jones from a local school to lead us in our final speech.
Thank you. All right. My Lord, the Mayor, Commanders, Officers, Cadets, ladies and gentlemen, I feel very privileged to be here today to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the RAF in my hometown, which, as we know, is the spiritual birthplace of the Royal Air Force. Over the past few weeks, my school and others have studied in detail the lives of the airmen that lie buried at the Souvenir Cemetery and the history surrounding the conflicts. One thought in particular that stands out for my peers and I from this experience is a real sense of pride and realization that we are all working together for the common objective of making history, remembrance, and gratitude live on. This was a result in cemeteries such as we have today, which help sustain rewarding and long-term relationships. I'm glad that schools were allowed and encouraged to participate in this grand and historic event because it has permitted us to form an intimate link between our generation and the one of the same age lying in Souvenir Cemetery. It has made us understand better their sacrifice for all of us. And every student that has participated will always remember their special airmen, be it Hamley, Bannister, Savinsky, Millet, or simply airmen. And this will help safeguard their memory. As a proud resident of France and of this region, and equally respectful of my British and European roots, I hope that in the short, mid, and long term, we all continue to learn from the causes of past and present conflicts to fully appreciate the importance of nurturing close existing ties as well as developing new ones. I'd like to say on behalf of all the schools that this day has been a moving and momentous event and one which we'll never forget. Thank you.
Fabienne, thank you very much, and thank you for the contribution of all of the schools. Watching the children move away to those individual graves at the cemetery was a truly moving experience, so thank you. Would you please stand?
Parade! Parade, shut!
Let us remember before God and commend to his sure keeping those who have died for their country in war, those whom we knew and whose memory we treasure, and all who have lived and died in the service of humanity.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. at the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them. Would you please remain standing as wreaths are laid?
I'll step you down after the last wreath laid.
Would you please